Hey.
How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Good. We are an hour and 15 minutes into our 12-hour live event, and so far nothing has substantially broken.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to get. You're not going to send us video?
I don't have video on this computer.
Okay. That's okay. That's all right. We will. We'll. That's fine. You think you're good set up there, Ken?
Yeah.
All right.
We're good to go.
So, let's see. How's it going? Sounds like you've been pretty busy.
Oh yeah. I've got weeks left, so when you start counting the weeks away till we're done, it gets pretty crazy when you're in any game project. This is no different.
So, for people that maybe are unfamiliar with you, give me an idea of what your role is at Oxide. Obviously, I kind of introed you as Dan Baker from Oxide Games, makers of the Nitrous engine behind Ashes of the Singularity. What exactly is your kind of role there, and how long have you been doing it?
Okay, well that's a long backstory here, and partly short. So Oxide's a fairly new company. We're 3 years old. And I'm looking at my business card right now, so it must be correct. It says I'm a partner. And what that means is I'm actually one of the founders of the studio. And this is why I can talk to you, because nobody can tell me not to.
Perfect.
It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Previously, most of the Oxide members, and actually all the founders, came from Firaxis Games. And we were actually the dev leads for Civilization 5. And we decided, hey, let's make our own studio and make a whole type of set of PC games that aren't being made right now. And 3 years later, that's what we're doing. So we're really happy with that. Now my role, I'm the graphics guru, or the lead graphics guru. So that's my kind of role from a technical standpoint. But I also can do pretty much any random thing. When you own part of your own company, there's all sorts of stuff that you have to get involved with it that
Right.
sort of surprises you, like figuring out how to rent office space. That was an interesting interesting story. And in fact, it took us 3 months to negotiate the lease. You'll find this amusing because we had to negotiate power, because we told them our computers are going to be using a lot of power because they're going to be crazy. And they were like, what? What do you mean you need a circuit for every computer? We're like, yes, we need a circuit for every computer.
Yeah, we did. I didn't have. We don't have that many PCs or kind of workstations here as you guys obviously have that. How many people do you have working at that office?
So the office is sort of complicated because we have a publishing / equity relationship with Stardock. So at the office itself, I don't know. We've got several companies here. We're using resources from the other studios. So there's probably Oxide itself is pretty small. We have about 10 people, but the team is bigger. The team is double that size. So at our actual physical office, there's probably 25 people.
Right.
It's actually a cool office. If you're ever in the town, you should stop by, because Mohawk Games is here.
Huh.
The Star Control guys are here. I don't know if you know this, but the Star Control remake is being made with our engine, which is really cool.
You guys are up in Baltimore,
Mohawk
right?
Games is Soren Johnson's company, the lead designer for Civilization 4.
Oh, okay.
So he's actually co-located with us right now too. So it's pretty interesting, like almost incubator for really cool game companies.
That's awesome. And you guys are up in Baltimore, you said, right?
Yep, we're in Baltimore.
That's good. I like it to be not all, kind of congealed out on the West Coast, too, which is why we got you on here earlier in the day as opposed to later in the day. Most of the other people that we're dealing with are West Coast bound, so time zone shifting. Yeah, our office setup here is, we basically came into like a 1,500 square foot place, not very big, and we just said take out every single wall and reroute every power outlet, because that's we wanted one giant open space for us here. So it worked out pretty well, I think, as well. So it's interesting. Obviously, you guys have been pushing forth for the full release here of Ashes of the Singularity. You released what did you call it, the second major revision of the game for early access just a couple of weeks ago? Or was that?
Yeah, we put out beta 2.
Okay.
We've had many updates.
Right.
So now we're moving on to the final stretches, and basically everything that's going to be in the game is in the game. We're at the last sort of stretch. There's a few missing things. Like the big thing that's not in there right now is the campaign. There's a campaign that you can play. That's the biggest thing that's not there. But yes, there's still updates every week. I'm just looking at our meme mail and like, oh, there's a new update coming out this week where we're just fixing some bugs and stuff.
Right.
But that's the new. That's what sort of I find funny about the internet these days, because people talk about, oh, your game is released or not. And you're like, you're not really ever released, because even when we're quote unquote released, we're still going to be doing updates every few weeks.
Right. Yeah, and you're not the only ones, obviously, that are doing that. And there's a lot of games that kind of evolve as opposed to just release. Now, you guys, and I guess you in particular, have been a big proponent of these kind of new low-level APIs, right? You were one of the early adopters of AMD's Mantle API. You're one of the earliest adopters of DirectX12, and you've talked about implementing a Vulkan version of the Nitrous engine, I guess, as well, right? What is it about the benefits of these new engines that really appeals to you? Like, why do you want to be first? Why do you want to jump in there and be the guy that has to deal with all the questions from people like me, as opposed to waiting a year and kind of like, okay, now everything's kind of been laid out, we can jump ahead?
It's because we like you so much. We've it's actually sort of born out of somewhat of frustration. One of the things that's sort of frustrating for us, we've worked on mostly strategy games, real time and otherwise, and if we feel like that a lot of the technology and the graphics technology in the industry is geared toward first-person shooters, and when you're actually talking about a strategy game, your needs are very different. Right. I mean, I'm looking right now, and it's sort of disconcerting. If you go to Steam, I'm actually going to go right now. If you go to the Steam front page,
right,
and look at the top 10 games, you've got Dota 2, which is not FPS. I mean, Counter-Strike and Team Fortress are FPSs. Football Manager 2016, I'm pretty sure isn't a FPS. Civilization 5 is still up there. I can't believe my the Arc is Warframe. So like half of these games are not FPSs, but we keep building our graphics tech around like a type of a game engine that isn't even necessarily the majority one. And so when we're talking about the issues that we ran into at Firaxis, it's all about, I mean, the driver overhead was just killing us, and they've gotten better. Like they've sort of hand optimized some of these drivers, but I mean, it became so dominant that like you'd have to go to your game designer. Imagine going to a meeting and you're going to your game designer. He has a great idea for a game, and you have to be the guy who says, "Yeah, we can't do that because the driver isn't gonna work." And that's a really not a fun discussion to have. So the reason why we've been very pro next-gen technology is that we felt a lot of games weren't getting made because of technological limitations. So one of Oxide's goals is to make the types of games that don't exist because the technological limitations have prevented them. We really want to explore that space.
That's cool. If we look at kind of the evolution, right? So Mantle was kind of like the first thing that really came out and sparked this big discussion, both in game development and in driver development and in the media, and even really from gamers themselves, right? And I always find it interesting that as a PC enthusiast myself, the PC enthusiast community, they are more enthusiastic about this technology than I think most people like at the hardware devs, right? At AMD and NVIDIA, it almost feels like, or devs, where a lot of these guys who are posting in forums, the guys who are real vocal on social media are kind of pushing forward now that we want to see DX12 in different things. Have you guys felt any of that? Were you getting positive feedback, negative feedback from just the implementation of DX12 and Mantle and Vulkan, for that matter, in Ashes?
You've had overwhelmingly positive feedback, and you're right. It's sort of surprising to us because this is very technical, geeky stuff, right? Like you have to be sort of an industry expert to understand the actual nuances of this stuff, and it's been surprising how much fan interest there's been in this technological, and it surprised us quite a bit, like how much interest people have had, and we've sort of had to have a quick learning experience of how to deal with all the interest in it.
Yeah, because to be fair, it was like when we first saw. I think I was at some conference, and you were up on stage talking about this engine when the very, very first demo was coming out using Mantle. And it was like, okay, now I want to talk to these guys. I want to meet these guys. I want to ask them questions about the hardware, about the software, how it all works together. And it's clear that, I don't know if you guys didn't expect the kind of from media and outside in the outside world, essentially, about what it was going to become. And so for me, now if we look again at kind of the most recent release, the beta 2 that came out, that we got a handful of days early.
Do we want to go ahead and pull up the benchmark maybe so we can give a...
Oh, yeah, sure.
We can show what the game looks like while we're talking about it?
Let's see.
May it not crash.
Yeah, that's true. Now that we're doing everything live. So when we got this in, first of all, I want to commend you for paying attention to our requests and like implementing things like the FCAT overlay, right? So it was completely not necessarily a benefit to you guys to do it. It was an extra step for you personally to integrate it. I would probably turn that down some. Are you getting
loud?
Yeah. But it helped us out. It has the potential to help us out dramatically when it comes to performance evaluations and that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and run that. And then once that gets going, Ken, you can go ahead and set it up there. So I guess all things considered, why did you decide to go ahead and implement that technology for us or for the media in general?
Oh, because we like you. No,
that's the second time we've gotten that.
Yeah, it wasn't that hard to do. So anytime you're asking for things to help you do analysis, we're big tech enthusiasts, right? Oh, you've got on there. We're big tech enthusiasts ourselves, so we really like reading lengthy reviews of stuff. So you can understand it's pretty difficult to do a lot of performance testing, so anything that can automate it is a good idea. So when we got the FCAT stuff, I was like, well, it's probably not a lot of work for us. It really wasn't too bad. Obviously, we had that little color sequence thing where I got the colors wrong because it wasn't. I don't know why. I was just being brain dead stupid, and I didn't have a way of testing it because it's actually sort of hard to get that rig set up, and we don't have one set up. So I was guessing. So that's primary reason is that it's not that hard for the game to provide diagnostics, and we do have a very selfish reason for it. And one of the things that people don't realize is that when the hardware architects go and they design GPUs, they take a look at these benchmarks. They actually really care a lot about benchmarks. So one of the things that's frustrating us is that if you look at most of the benchmarks, they're reviewing FPSs. Well, okay, we're not making FPSs. So we knew full well that if we make a really easy to use benchmark that gives you a lot of data, that this will influence the hardware architecture to be something that was useful for us.
That's a good point. So not only do you have, if we're looking over here, for people who are watching the live stream, there is this kind of flashing bar on the left-hand side. That is actually the FCAT kind of capture-based performance overlay that we would normally feed into a capture system that we're able then to read frame by frame. We can get a whole lot of information about how long each frame is on the screen, for example. But you already output a ton of timer data, essentially, to a text file. Right. So, in your opinion, is the data provided by this FCAT overlay different than what you kind of output through that timer data? Is it just a different way of viewing it?
It depends. This gets very complicated. So the FCAT's measuring a very specific thing. It's useful for measuring what it measures, but it's not measuring the render time for frames necessarily, due to the way, because we have the whole controversy, or not controversy, but issues of like how the new display working in Windows 10. Our timers are extremely accurate for what they're telling you. I mean, they're telling you the render time for each frame.
Right. And
we're very confident of that. But FCAT is telling you sort of what the stream is doing. Now, the really nice thing about FCAT, of course, I've talked to you about this, about like the VSync thing. It's sort of assuming that it works a certain way, and if it doesn't, the data may not mean what you think it does.
Right.
The really nice thing about FCAT is that it correlates the frame. Because you've got the data injected onto the frame itself, it's on the stream, you actually know what every frame is doing, right? So you can analyze the data stream after the fact. So it's pretty useful to have a marker on the actual stream so we can take a look at it after the fact. Because if you're just looking at a bunch of timing, it's like I've had questions before where people were like, well, I see there's a bad frame here. What was going on? And you can't figure it out. Like, you're like, well, I don't know what was going on in that frame. But then you look at something like FCAT, it's really nice because you can correlate it directly with the stream.
I agree. I mean, so I'm just kind of glancing over here. This is one of the outputs of data, and we're not going to have the time to kind of detail this really step by step, but we see a whole bunch of very useful information about GPU boundedness, average frame rates. If we go into the breakdown, you have individual like normal, medium, heavy batches, which that correlates to how many draw calls you kind of have on the frame at any given time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then you actually have it broken down into individual scenes, right? So if you want to, this was actually very useful for us to validate some of the data. We basically would take the information you here and in the log file, compared to the data we got from our FCAT capture and frame rating kind of analysis side of things, and we could match up, oh, what's happening in Fighters Chase Cam 2, we see this, and it helped us tremendously make some important kind of, I guess, discoveries about what was really happening in the game. Now, so since this has come out, there's been a whole lot of different discussion around DirectX 12 and actually because of kind of a confusion on our part or the media's part about this game, a whole wider range discussion about kind of like the Microsoft Store.
Yeah.
So let's say this: the exclusive full screen stuff. The difference between AMD and NVIDIA, AMD kind of came out and officially said that, yeah, we didn't have some particular enumerated item in DirectX 12 for direct flip, so their next driver will do that, so that the NVIDIA and AMD behavior will end up being the same in your game. So that was helpful information. But if you look at what DX12 is, and it's separate from the Microsoft Store, but then what Tim Sweeney came out and wrote a big editorial about this week, do you have any thoughts or opinions on kind of the way you guys are taking your games versus the pathway? Because obviously you're selling this game on Steam, right? You're selling this game not through the Microsoft Store, at least currently. Is that a concern for you guys, kind of the ability to maintain an open platform like this?
Yeah, I don't know why Tim was so militant about the Microsoft Store. I mean, this is the nice thing is I actually have all this experience on the business side, so I could see the numbers on it, and like nobody buys things. I mean, I hate to say this, but nobody buys games on Microsoft Store. It's just not relevant in the industry. Right. So Microsoft can do whatever they want, and they're not. I mean, you just sort of laugh. They're not forcing us to do anything. So we're making a DX12 game, and we can do whatever we want. I mean, it's the platform's totally open.
Right.
I mean, I suppose if you want to sell something through the Microsoft Store, which is your choice, and it's actually a pain in the butt. I don't know if I could say that online, but yes,
you absolutely can.
But it's sort of a pain. They have all these things you're supposed to do, and you're just sort of like, Microsoft, you're crazy. Like you're like 0.1% of the market. You can't demand all this stuff. No one will do it. So it doesn't really going to influence anything. I mean, I guess that people have a fear they're going to try and lock Steam out, but there's no way that's going to happen. I mean, Steam has 150 million users. Microsoft would be insane to try and do something like lock Steam off the system. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
Right.
So the practical matter is that I understand Microsoft's I think what they're trying to do is, like, when you're on the Xbox platform, there's a set of requirements that you're supposed to meet. And that's to provide consistency between all the applications. And it's all sorts of random stuff, like the save screens have to be unified so there's no confusion, that the game has to load within a certain amount of seconds, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what they're trying to do is provide some level of homogeneity on the Windows side, so that when you buy a game on it, that there's a certain minimum bar of technical things that are met. I'm sure that's what they're trying to do. I don't think that they're really trying to lock the system down, or is any giant conspiracy by them to do that anyway.
Yeah, I agree that I thought Tim's editorial was more aggressive than I thought it would be, based on kind of the input I had been getting from Microsoft directly. And I honestly do believe that a lot of their goals and kind of the intentions, at least for the platform and kind of improving things and trying to have this cross compatibility is this kind of amazing goal that has always been up in the air. But I'm with you. Like, it only matters if people buy games through the store, and they don't do that today. The only worry is that Microsoft may put more and more exclusive titles on that store, right? So their own titles like the new Gears of War, and I think what's that game? Quantum Break is going to come out this month. That's going to be exclusively on that store, and so you do worry about that. But once I got confirmation from Microsoft that yes, they plan to continue to allow like an exclusive full screen mode for DirectX 12 for anybody else to use, I felt much more comfortable with kind of their, I guess, the controversy that surrounded what they were doing.
And there's some confusion about our game. I noticed that people are saying we don't do exclusive full screen. That's not true. We do exclusive full screen in Windows on DirectX 12. The difference is the swap chain effect, but they were actually in full screen mode.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was the AMD versus NVIDIA thing, where we could get a GeForce card to go into what we're used to it as a full screen with vertical tearing or horizontal tearing and VSync and all that. We couldn't with AMD. AMD has since come out and said they're going to have a driver that will, I guess, either it's Flip X or Direct Flip, or maybe those are the same things, and I don't really understand that aspect.
Neither do I.
Okay.
Believe it or not, it's like stuff that's beyond like in the bowels. And that stuff is like there be dragons down there. Like it is pretty tricky. The funny thing is that all this blew up. Like, you guys are like 8 months behind the dev community.
Right.
We discovered all these changes back in like June of the summer, and there's this very long and angry forum of developers saying, how are we supposed to profile our game and what do we do?
Yeah.
And then we figured all this out, sort of came to terms with it. Okay, it's not the end of the world. We understand what's going on. And then it's funny that 9 months later, all of a sudden it's coming out to the public, and they're exactly the same conversation that internally everybody was having like 9 months ago.
Yeah. Yep. It's been interesting. If nothing, made the last week of my life a little bit more exciting. Mm-hmm. What is your take on Vulkan? Have you guys said publicly that you are going to implement a Vulkan API version of Ashes of the Singularity, or the Nitrous engine, I guess?
So a little background on Vulkan. Vulkan is made by the Kronos Group. We are actually part of the Kronos Group.
Okay.
So we're very active in it. We've been very active in the development of Vulkan. We've done some headway into working on Vulkan. We actually have some code and a little bit of stuff working. But Vulkan is obviously, I don't know how, probably at least a year behind DX12 for where it was. And it just came out like, months ago.
Right.
So it's just, and we're too focused on getting Ashes at the moment. But once Ashes out the door, we're going to, take another stab at or get deeper into a Vulkan. Vulkan's very similar to D312. It's so similar in many ways that I imagine long term why anybody who supports DX12 wouldn't also consider doing Vulkan.
Okay.
It really very, very similar.
Do you think that will have any impact? Sorry, do you think that have any impact on things like SteamOS or Linux gaming?
Oh yeah, it could have huge impact. I mean, Valve really, really committed to Vulkan. They're putting a lot of resources into sort of packaging up and making it nice. I can't go into some of the business stuff I know, but they're very committed toward it. So I have a lot of confidence that Vulkan will become extremely viable. So the first step is just to get us on Vulkan. But the graphics API is the hard thing about getting onto SteamOS. Hard thing about getting into Linux. Right. So with Vulkan being a real viable solution here, and I do think it is, a relatively small amount of work if you've already done DX12, it could really make Linux gaming viable.
That I think, I know a lot of our readers and viewers and fans, whatever, is a topic that they're really interested in. So I'll be curious to see how that kind of gets impacted. So what do you guys have planned here for the next couple of months? Is it really focused on, we need to get this game done and out the door for its full release? Do you guys plan any kind of more significant DirectX 12 feature implementations at all?
Not for this version of the game. I think we did a pretty good job of using DX12 features, but the reality is that we're probably not going to be completely exploitive on DX12 until we can kill our DX11 path.
Right.
Now, that's one exciting thing about Vulkan, because Vulkan's down level OS support, on on Windows 7. So one of the reasons for wanting to support is that it allows us to, it sounds weird, but it allows us to kill our DX11
Interesting.
path.
Right.
So that's pretty exciting for us. And so the next iteration of our engine, we've already got our next project sort of starting to plan out. That would be expansion packs to Ashes. Ashes is doing pretty well, and there's a lot of interest. So we're going to continue supporting it. Actually, even more than we were expecting. So it's selling better than our projections.
Good. That's awesome.
And so the next version of the engine, we're really looking at architecting around sort of natively some of the really cool stuff that DX12 can do.
Right.
And that gets obviously very technical discussion. But so in a couple years, you'll probably see Nitrous 1.5 or 2.0 or however we brand it. That will do some exciting things.
Do you think the multi-GPU implementation that you guys have is kind of as good as you can get for now? Is there a lot more to be exploited? Or is that really something that we probably are putting too much faith in, or like the community is getting too excited about than they should be?
I think we could do a lot better on our multi-GPU, right? I mean, this is the first stab at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, man, I'm going to get killed by the IHVs. Honestly, the drivers from both AMD and NVIDIA were lagging behind our support of this stuff. So we couldn't do all some of the fancier stuff just because like we were barely getting drivers that worked at all.
Right.
Because we could talk to them and like, yeah, but no one's. They're like, you're the only guys who've got this working right now, so we don't have any test cases. I'm like, well, here you go. Here's a test case.
Yeah, it has been. I don't know what year it was that the company Lucid Logics came out and promised cross-vendor, cross-generational support. 2010, again, we think it was. So it's been a long time that this has kind of been an idea. And then, of course, as the community tends to do, they find that one feature that comes out like on a DirectX 12 bullet feature list that everybody kind of gravitates towards. So it's interesting. It's interesting to kind of see it implemented. And you're right. You're the only ones that are doing it, and it's impressive. It's impressive to see so far. We're kind of towards the end of our time. I'm curious. Do you have anything that you would like expressed to the community, or stuff that you want them to do or not do? Do you want to push forward? Do you need more emphasis on Vulkan, on DX12, anything like that kind of stands out on something you might want to just kind of air out there?
No, I just want to say thank you to the community. Everyone's been very positive. It's a good experience for us. The press has been very positive. Our fans have been very positive. There's a lot of hardware enthusiasts. Part of what we realized when making PC games is that PC games can be deeper than just people playing a game. A lot of people love their hardware, and it's a hobby for them. Building the machine. There's this whole thing that goes into it. So we really wanted to make sure that we take advantage of all the time and effort people are spending on their PCs. It's part of our credo. So we're really excited that people are very positive about it, because it's really easy to get negative real fast. This is prototype tech, not prototype, but this is first gen technology. It's very easy for something to go horribly wrong, and sometimes people have to be patient with us and the IHVs to work through all the issues.
I'm impressed. I'm glad that there are developers out there like you that are pushing things forward and are really kind of putting not just they're putting you guys are putting stress on us. I'm gonna say stress, but emphasis on us. It's like, hey, here are these things, test these things out, which in turn puts pressure on IHVs, puts pressure on Microsoft and Kronos Group to get these things out the door and up and running. So I think you're a big part of kind of moving this community and this industry in the right direction. Where can people follow you or find you if they want to keep up with your doings on the internet?
They can obviously go to our website, Oxide Games, although you can also go to our Ashes of the Singularity website with lots of forums. Right. And they can follow us on Twitter. And if I can remember the Twitter handle, I think it's just Oxide Games.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too.
And every now and then we post something on Twitter. I think we should post more often, but
probably should. You can look up Dan on Twitter too. He's interesting. If you're into the tech, the DirectX 12 Vulkan tech talk, you're an interesting follow as well. Obviously for me, it's where
and I'll be talking at GDC actually quite a bit on Vulkan even.
Oh, awesome! I will be there. So let me know when your sessions are, and I'll stop by and have a listen. Okay. So. Thank you very much for stopping by, Dan. Really appreciate it. You are the first guest on our crazy-ass 12-hour live stream. And
I hope you have plenty of and or coffee.
Yeah, we all I have is Diet Coke and water. Maybe I should have planned better.
Oh no, there's beer in the fridge.
There's beer in the fridge too, so
That'll have the intended effect, right?
right.
Yeah, I usually drink whiskey.
Yes.
That's usually...
Yeah. See, I should have brought in some bourbon. You're right. Damn. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. See you later.
If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.